Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today on Classic Mini DIY. For today's job, we're going to be removing the battery cable out of your Classic Mini. Now this job's a pretty simple job, but it is kind of time consuming, so what I've done is I've separated this video into two separate videos, one on the removal of your battery cable, and then I'll be posting another one in a few weeks on how to install your new battery cable. So for this job, you're going to need a jack, two jack stands, a power drill, a set of manual screwdrivers, a socket set, and you should be all set. You might need a blade as well, just like a box cutter or just a small knife, if anyone's put any zip ties on your current battery cable. In addition, this video is going to cover our older minis, so anything with a push start button. Newer minis have a pre-engaged starter motor, which means that there's no floor start button. You just simply turn the key and it starts up the car. It's pretty much uniform on the two of them how this whole thing works, but with older minis there's a floor start button that you need to also consider when you're taking this battery cable out. So let's go ahead and get started, and we will get that battery cable removed. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is get the car jacked up in the front. We should be able to reach the cable parts in the back without jacking it up, but we may need to jack that up as well. We're going to put jack under, get some jack stands in there for safety, so if the jack does fail, it doesn't come crashing down on our faces. And then we'll move on to the back where we're going to disconnect the battery. So one thing worth noting is that you don't need to jack up both sides of the car. The battery in these older cars runs right along the left side of the car, or if you're sitting in the car, the right side. So we don't need to get the whole car up in the air, just this left side. Okie doke, so we got the car jacked up, and we're going to move to the back of the car where we're going to disconnect the battery so we don't shock ourselves when we're taking this old line out. So the next step is taking out this battery lead right here. Now in my car this is the positive lead, that's the lead that you're going to need to be taking out, and that runs all the way underneath the car, all the way up to the front, to the starter motor. To do this, most of the time you'll need a socket set. So I have some deep well sockets because sometimes the screw's a little long there and it needs to be just a little bit deeper so you can get onto that socket there. Be careful, this is a battery, so it's really important that you don't shock yourself. So just make sure that while you're working on this, you're being conscious of the fact that there's electricity coursing through these lines. Cool. So now that lead is taken off, the next step is to actually get the line out of this connector here. So again, socket wrench right on these nuts here, and we'll take those off. As you can see, there's other lines going to this battery. Those are auxiliary devices. I have a stereo in here and some extra lights, things like that. So these need to come off as well while you're going to be taking this out. Which means if you have a radio, it's going to reset if you have some special settings in it or something like that. Alright, so there's our battery line. Looks a little dirty and run down, but that's why we're replacing it. So go ahead and feed this out the bottom, and I'll show you where the line runs underneath the car. Alright, so now we're underneath the car here. This is your battery box, which is where you just disconnected the line. This is your battery line right here. There's going to be lots of different ways that these have been attached on. As you can see up here, there's a zip tie. Down here, there's duct tape around it to prevent it from shorting. I guess this is stripped out over here. And then you've got these little rivet pieces all the way down the rest of the length of the car here. Which, if you got pop rivets in, are going to be a little bit challenging to get out, but we'll tackle that once we get to it. So the first thing you're going to need to do is just pull this out of the trunk. So there's your battery cable, just what we saw on the top there, and we'll grab some little pincers, cut this out here. There we go, that's out. Alright, and so from that point on, all we have now are the cable clips themselves that run, which you probably can't see in this video here, but they run back behind here. I'll get a better video of them here in a moment. Cool, so the next step is to get the old battery cable out of your car. So there's lots of ways that these battery cables get connected. Some are with screws, some are with rivets. In this car, in my car, it's a set of rivets. And they're rivets all the way back to the front of the car there. So to get these rivets out, you're gonna need a screwdriver. That screwdriver, you're gonna drill out the rivet holes and then pull the rivets out. So I'm gonna do this one here just so you guys can see, kind of get a little bit of an idea of what you need to do. Hopefully get a good shot, and then we'll move farther towards the front of the car and I'll show you a little bit more of what you need to do. All right. Cool, so to drive those rivets out, I've got my drill here, and now you're gonna need a drill bit that's just a little bit bigger than the rivet hole. That way you can actually loosen up and get rid of the rivet that's in there. Can be a little bit hard, especially if you're kind of tight for space down here. But there we go, that rivet is drilled out and just hanging on the end of my screwdriver there. So we'll get rid of that, and then this falls right away. Now you're going to want to keep these brackets here, because you're going to want to use them when you put your new battery cable back on the car. They just kind of bend open and they come off just like that. So alright, so now we're up here. We can see that it looks like the battery cable at some point touched our exhaust pipe and shorted out. So it looks like whoever did this before put zip ties and duct tape around it to prevent the short from happening again. While that probably does work, there's a lot better ways to do that. So in the future, we'll probably want to avoid doing something like this or getting a cable that actually is a little bit more robust. But we'll be applying a rivet mount to this when we come back so that this doesn't happen again. Now, while you're down here, you're going to want to be careful. Your brake lines and fuel lines run up against this most of the time. And you don't want to screw into these and mess up your brake or fuel system, because then you're going to have a much bigger job on your hands. Cool, so we got those zip ties undone. The next step is to come up here, see if we can get a better shot of this. Cool, so we've got this battery cable in the back loosened up and taken off of all of its little brackets. The next thing we're going to need to do is take out these two nuts that are in here. We've got one that runs to the back of your car, to the battery, and then one that runs to the front. This is only for push start motors. If you have a motor with a pre-engaged starter, you're not going to have any of this. It's just going to be a cable all the way up to the front there. But for us older cars, we got to take this additional step, and we technically have two battery cables. The nuts on this are 7/16, and so we're just gonna have to loosen these up. And some of you may have some auxiliary stuff on here. You know, just keep that in mind while you're loosening these, and make a note of what they're connected to here. Cool, so that's one. These are both very important, so just those go back to the battery side. And here we have our whole cable. We're going to need to get new clamps for our new battery cable once that gets put in that match this. So battery cable to the starter. So that is loose, and we are going to need to get these other mounting brackets off, so that's what I'll be doing next. Cool. So last but not least, we need to disconnect the front cable from your starter. So on my car, the starter, the cable connects to the starter right there. That's that nut. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that. There's no way for me to set the camera up for this one, so I'm just going to have to disconnect it. But it's just a standard hex nut on the end of your starter. Alright, so that's it for Classic Mini DIY today. We got our old battery cable removed. In the next week or so, I'm going to be posting another video on how to install your new battery cable. So keep an eye out, and I will see you then.